21 The Great Fracture. Belater entered the room expecting his patron to come at any moment. The aroma of the delicacies that had been arranged to satisfy Pyriel's insatiable appetite almost hit the face of the historian, who advanced towards the same place where he had sat during the morning. The historian had been quite surprised by the fact that this man with the serious face and beard was also a guest of the Alchemists' Guild, but not just any guest, but rather, as he himself had said, an archmage and also a guest of Mercer the Great. Alchemist. Belater took a seat pondering these matters with his gaze lost on the delicacies that crowded the table. The cloying smell of the delicacies was almost stunning, and although they surely tasted as good as they looked, for Belater just seeing them at this opportunity was more than enough. The prodigious historian remained meditative. He still could not understand the events that were unfolding in front of him, but there were indications that Pyriel was plotting things and looking for knowledge that not everyone would like to have. Belater was in these musings when Heligor the Archmage burst into the room accompanied by his guards. "Excuse the intrusion, Mr. Belater." Heligor entered with a light step directly to take a seat near Belater. As soon as he sat down, he deeply smelled the delicacies arranged on the coffee table. "It seems that Pyriel must be coming. Mercer is more sober and would not allow this waste." He took a wild fruit pastry and took a huge bite, making half disappear. "Cake instantly. I cannot hide my appreciation for this kind of delicacy, clearly a product of ingenuity and good taste." He ate the other half with evident pleasure. "It does not seem very comfortable, Mr. Historian." Belater tried to look away from the Archmage, but the moment he did, the pair of guards made him feel their presence as if they were threatening him with a knife directly to his neck. He feared for his life, but he remained firm since he was simply doing his job. "Comfort is something difficult to find when one is away from his home," he replied as he looked for something to eat, but there were too many things to choose from among them all. "Do you really think that there is such a thing as a home?" He said this looking at the girl who stood guard at his side, although she did not flinch. "Believe me, dear friend, that in all the time I have spent in Therianor I have not known such something like a home, although I have seen many people kill for something they call that." Heligor's gaze seemed to get lost in past memories. "The reality of those who live in this world like cattle is bitter. They do not change anything around them, they simply wait, let the world give them bitter death." "Haven't enough people already died on Therianor?" Belater would have liked to answer immediately, but he thought it was necessary to pour himself a little of the aromatic tea that was waiting to be drunk in front of him. "Therianor's story is probably built on savage struggles." He took a long sip of the delicious tea. "Reason in several senses, but I think that the construction of a real world is done based on constant struggles. It is no less true that the existence of a kingdom necessarily implies that there will be a war at some point. From this not even the gods escape." Heligor smiled calmly. "Do you know anything about the Peliaros War?" Belater immediately doubted whether to answer. He felt in his heart that this conversation could become dangerous for him, but as a historian he could not show ignorance of a momentous event in Therianor, so he ended up answering, "There is enough to say about that war, although not I know if Pyriel is interested in hearing from her." Just at that moment the alchemist entered the room. "Come on, my esteemed guest, enlighten us on the details of that incident." He advanced directly to his post, poured himself a cup of tea, and taking a cinnamon cake in each hand he invited Belater to continue. "Don't hold back, please." He had no choice but to answer. He cleared his throat under the watchful eye of Pyriel and Heligor. "It is difficult to decide where to start, that conflict may be one of the most important in more or less recent history. It marked the history of Therianor not only in the events that occurred, but also in reality. Still vestiges of that war can be found if you know where to look for them. Pyriel wiped off the crumbs of the pastries that he had shamelessly devoured. My dear Belater, do you think that this war began the descent of the north so that Eragmador would position himself as the most powerful kingdom? I must deny that. I do not believe that Eragmador is currently the greatest force in Therianor, although in fact it is not in the real sum of the facts. Does Eragmador have the greatest military force? He took another sip of tea. Helagor did not take his eyes off him. No, that strength is that of Hyperion. Does he have the greatest wealth? Neither. Helagor interrupted him. Tell me then what makes this kingdom so special. Special has been their constant insistence to try to bring order and peace to Therianor, but for some reason whenever they have tried, or a balance has been reached, something always happens, some damage, some problem, as if orchestrated by a hand mysterious that he does not like peace and order. He knew that perhaps he had gone too far in his assertion, but the truth was that for him there was enough of that. He had never been able to explain how in moments of great peace and economic apogee, in all Therianor to because of what was done in Eragmador, everything always ended up destroyed by some opposing force, the gods perhaps. Helagor laughed openly while Pyriel watched him with a mouth full of food, taciturn. You are undoubtedly an idealist, my dear friend, Helagor said, turning from laughter to absolute seriousness. Does it seem to you that everything is connected in some way, or am I wrong? Pyriel continued eating without pause, as if he were eating on automatic mode, while he kept his full concentration on the conversation. In my opinion, every warlike conflict in the history of Therianor has occurred too early and in times recognized as peace and prosperity. Quite strange indeed, don't you think the same? Belater was already beginning to get in tune with the insidious way of speaking of his classmates. I don't think it is something that I, as someone who does not actively participate in life in Therianor, can give an opinion on. Pyriel agreed to the Archmage's sayings, but I don't think you are entirely wrong. Somehow the gods do. They dominate everything and we are nothing more than insects for them, garbage. They play with us without any resentment, so coincidence or not, it is true that the damage is enormous and nobody can deny it. Pyriel interrupted the guests as he refilled his cup of tea. But don't be distracted, my Lord Belater, please tell us some anecdote, such as how do you think the great crack formed? Helagor nodded enthusiastically at Pyriel's request and leaned over to his seat expectantly. Belater savored the pressure they put on him and tried to hide it with the rim of the teacup. He would have taken a sip, but it was empty. I'm not sure if what I know about it will be satisfactory, but I must tell you what I know about it. To the fracture. Apparently the fracture is the product of a fight between two powerful magicians, one from the extinct army of Peliaros and the other from Eragmador. Belater cleared his throat. What he had said was not more than everyone knew about it. The fracture, their identities have been veiled by the oblivion of time, but some elements I have elucidated in the fog that exists in these matters. It seems that this is getting interesting, Pyriel pointed out, taking a plate where he began to pile cakes, pieces of cakes and various cookies. Please continue, ignore my actions. Belater looked at the bearded Helagor and continued under the attentive gaze of those present. It was a fatal war indeed, and many of the facts that covered it are unknown. It is known of a battle in the forest of Atlantis, of a first combat on the outskirts of Peliaros, of an attempted invasion of the northerners to Eragmador that almost caused the hecatomb, and then the imprecision in the data reigns until they reach a battle unparalleled in Eragmador where the city was practically in ruins. How did they manage to win and that Peliaros was destroyed? It is one of the greatest enigmas that exists, almost as great as who and how they opened that huge crack in front of Eragmador. Balater searched for some details in his memory. Helagor smiled subtly. He has a general idea of the facts, and the truth is that it is understood that this is the case. After all, if Eragmador managed to stay, it was more of luck than of skill, or of his strength. Believe so? In my research I have been able to verify the opposite. He filled his teacup again and inhaling the sweet aroma of the brew he cleared his thoughts. In the annals of history there are a few records about the fight in Eragmador. It is very probable that the fire of the sanctuary and the destruction of the palace is the cause. On the other hand, apparently there was a feeling of forgetting what happened and giving a new start to Eragmador on the part of those who survived, a pair of paladins who helped restore the kingdom when all seemed lost. Balater continued, he did indeed make a mark on Eragmador, and in the few surviving records the Wizard of Peliaros was recorded as the Dark Radiant and assigned the post of Wizard of the Northern Kingdom, although there is no certainty that he held such a post. It is rare for such a powerful wizard to be in the north, especially at a time when wizards were few and far between. That's what I mean when I see strange coincidences. It's not like wizards have been widely accepted in Therianor anyway, Pyriel added without pausing in his endeavor to devour a piece of pie in one bite. It is evident that the battle was catastrophic for both sides, but the fact that Peliaros was somehow destroyed after Eragmador was almost in ruins is astonishing. How did that happen? Nobody knows. Helagor scratched his beard thoughtfully. I don't know how it happened either, even to me as Archmage that's a complete mystery, and that's saying enough. I do not know much about that war, its causes above all, but I can affirm that the destruction that was generated in it was such that nobody wanted to keep details of it. I have no doubt of the enormous pain that spread in the kingdom of some in the way. Balater detected something in the Archmage's gaze, as if he was overcoming something that he did not know, but did not dare or did not want to share it with them. What kind of powers were wielded in said war to cause so much destruction? It's a question that has plagued me for a long time, but if the paladins themselves decided to erase it from Eragmador's history, it is for some reason that is best kept as secret as possible. Are you not interested in knowing the causes? Pyriel asked, cleaning up the crumbs that were left on his plate. When I was a boy, I was interested in that time, but nowadays no longer. There are too many layers of silence that hide the truth. However, if you are interested in knowing. In a brief expedition that I made to the ruins of Peliaros, I found almost with terror that what destroyed it was fire, a fire so intense that the rock itself melted before the heat that destroyed it, and the truth is that this destruction was apparently surprisingly. The amount of human remains indicates that people did not manage to escape for some reason. Balater took out a sweet roll to satisfy the hunger that had opened up from so much talking. The truth is that the north was marked by the fall of Peliaros, so much so that it is still remembered as the Great Error, the Great Destruction or similar things. They know that they should not go to the call of a king. It is the rumors that say that Arkell, the king of that Peliaros, called them to the city to unify the north, but there are no official vestiges of that call, and as I have told you, in Eragmador there are no corroborating documents. This only serves to increase the enigma. They were at it when a tall, stiff-faced man who looked no more than 50 years old entered the room, he was wearing a red robe with gold trim. As soon as Pyriel saw him he almost jumped to his feet, throwing the plate to the ground. "Grand Master, what brings you here?" Balader also stood up when he saw Pyriel's reaction, but Helagor only gave him a silent smile. "Pyriel, you don't get tired of eating like an animal," he reproached Pyriel without any shame as he advanced towards those present. "You must be Balader the historian, Mercer the Grand Master Alchemist. Nice to meet him." He extended a handful of rings with precious stones. Balader answered the greeting with a firm handshake, although on his chest he felt almost like a hostage, like an animal waiting to be taken to the slaughterhouse. "Don't worry, Mr. Balader, his adventure here is almost over." The words of the Grand Master Alchemist came to him as a clear threat. A cold slowly ran down his back, so he just smiled nervously. Helagor stood up sharing a knowing look with Mercer the Grand Master Alchemist. "Let's get to the point, the gods don't wait." Mercer's smile nearly caused Balader to faint, who was standing among them all, dumbfounded and helpless.
If you like our work, do not forget to like it and subscribe to receive notifications of our next stories. If you want to support our editorial project, you can follow us on Patreon, where you will find our project in more details, or support directly through Flow in the description links.